welcome to Bend the Knee, a Song of Ice and Fire podcast. I am Sir Matt, the Bud Knight.
And I am Ser Ezra, the Watchful. Welcome back. We're doing a little Daemon Targaryen series here. We were asked by one of our listeners to cover this individual and to take a look back at Fire and Blood and learn more about him. We think he's going to be pivotal, very important to this new HBO Game of Thrones,
Prequel.
House of the Dragon, prequel.
Prequel, yeah, absolutely, yeah. I mean, Daemon Targaryen, as we, last time we kind of just introduced him. Who is he going to be? He's going to be a big player in this. If it's going to be centered around Dance of the Dragons, he's going to be a very, very big player. So last time we talked about just kind of his early life and a lot of the issues he has with his brother, King Viserys. They have a kind of strained relationship. It goes back and forth. And so the last time we talked, it's kind of some issues, some name calling, really, over dead children, right? So
yeah,
not really the best. And so now we're gonna get to kind of repairing that relationship here. We have at 106 AC, Daemon leads an army to invade the Stepstones. In the southern very narrow sea, with the support of Lord Corlys Velaryon and his fleet, and with the use of Daemon's dragon, Caraxes, he made the enemies in the Triarchy, which is Myr, Tyrosh, and Lys, during the course of his adventures there, right? So he makes a ton of enemies while he's there, but he also makes enemies in the Seven Kingdoms, including Sir Otto Hightower, and members of House Royce for his disregard of his wife Rhea, who's from the Vale. So Daemon Targaryen he's his own man. He definitely angers a lot of people. We talked about some of that last time here. So now he's on this path here to kind of retake the Stepstones, kind of for his brother.
Yeah. And I guess what I mentioned too, so his first marriage, I didn't talk about it much in the first video, but Rhea Royce is who he was married to, and it's this sort of it's an alliance, right? It's trying to strengthen these ties to the Vale. And whenever he does travel there, he talks about the sheep, he talks about just the terrain and how boring it is. And I think he's a guy who likes to be around action, to be entertained, to be in the city, and just really didn't like that. So that's a lot of tension going on there. And so when he does, he's basically estranged from he's staying away from his wife, and he's in King's Landing running the city watch. And then now, boom, he's going down to the Stepstones and he's engaging in warfare. And he's already upset Otto Hightower, Hand of the King, and individuals from the Vale. So that's kind of where we are with that first, marriage not going very, very well, and him already having fathered a bastard, and hoping that we could sort of, he actually, and I don't think I mentioned this before, but like he goes to Viserys and asks if he can set his wife, Rhea Royce, aside. He went that far, just didn't want to be with her anymore. So, and it's denied to him. So
yeah, absolutely. And remember, his whole goal is to become king, right? And so he thought by helping, get his brother the seat, that he should be kind of next in line, and that's not become the case. And so that's kind of been the issue here. So so Daemon goes on to conquer just about everything but two of the islands. He then declares himself king of the Stepstones and the Narrow Sea, and he's even crowned by Corlys the Sea Snake. So the Triarchy, which is those three kind of countries coming together there over from Essos, launch a massive fleet under Rosalio Rindune to retake the Isles, and Dorne even joins the alliance. Because remember, at this time, Dorne is just their own thing. They're not really part of the Seven Kingdoms. That comes a lot later. Yeah. And so, bored with ruling his meager kingdom, Daemon returns to the King's Landing during a tourney that between the Green and the Blacks. That's its own video. we'll have to do that. But that is, that's good. To me, I'm thinking that's probably end of like season 1 or season 2, right? That's going to be a real big. Sure. Big significant kind of moment in the prequel series, and this is when he reconciles, right? He offers his brother the Stepstone crown. There's a really nice picture in the World of Ice and Fire book of this, and then his brother welcomes him, right, and gives him a seat back on the small council.
Yeah, so I mean, for I think it was like about a year or two, he's there, kind of ruling nothing. He's almost like a pirate king, really. The stepstones are often later on, like the nine penny kings will try to take it over, and it's controlling trade between Essos and Westeros and things like that. And it's not much. There's not much there, to it. So he gets bored with that, and he does want to come back and get back into this Game of Thrones and start to reconcile things with his brother and just get back in good standing, maybe get a seat on the small council, which he does. I also want to mention here, though, that he's upset, and he takes Corlys Valerion with him, the sea snake, who, by the way, when you go back and you look at all of this, you have to look, you see where the factions start to kind of split and fracture, separate, or whatever. House Valerion is on this other side where, in part one, we talk about the old king and how he passed over Rhaenys Targaryen, who was a female, to give the crown to Viserys, who is Daemon's brother. So Rhaenys, who was passed over, marries Corlys Valerion, and so, or was married at the time, actually. And so he's upset that his wife was passed over and feels like he has sort of this claim. So when Daemon starts to kind of feel like he's not getting what he should out of this, or he's not getting, Prince of Dragonstone, things like that, who does he go to? People who have these same type of feelings, Corlys Valerion and stuff like that. So then they kind of get together, and you start to see this fracturing, and that's where you get to some of this, the greens and the blacks. So again, that's a whole separate video, but just so you kind of understand where the fracturing happened, the queen, who was the princess who was passed over, Rhaenys Targaryen, starts to kind of create this whole other group, and that's a big deal, and we'll get into that
Yeah.
later. But just for context,
that exactly. Yeah. And that'll have to be that. I mean, that's going to be the two big sides in what will be the prequel show, right? The blacks
yes,
and the greens. I mean, that
yeah,
just opposing sides there. So, I mean, if you had a lot of fun watching the Game of Thrones, especially early on, being like, oh, I want, the Lannisters to win, or I want the Starks to win, or I want the Targaryens to win. I mean, that's going to be
yeah,
where people stand, right?
right,
Yeah. So, okay. So, it says neither age or exile changed Damon's nature, right? So he's come back. He starts taking up with his old companions in the city watch, and returns back to the brothels. Damon was cold with Viserys' second wife, Alicent Hightower, and her children, who had pushed him further down the line of succession. Daemon spent hours in the company of his nieces, Prince Rhaenyra Targaryen. He praises her beauty and gives her all these lavish gifts and all of these things. And then is where we actually start to get into some interesting kind of stuff here, because so a lot of it comes from this book here, which we talked last time, which is the World of Ice and Fire. This is where we have a lot of the stuff, and it's kind of interesting. Real quick here, I want to not another side here, but in the World of Ice and Fire book, it's told to us through a maester's perspective, but there is another character around this time whose name is Mushroom, and he's like a court jester. He's a dwarf. And he has differing tales of just about every event that happens. And so it's actually kind of interesting. And this is a big part of the whole series in general, is perspective. Who's telling the story, point of view. So some of these things are kind of like, it may be this or it may be that, right? And that's going to
yeah,
be,
yeah,
going to be pretty interesting. But it says, that certainly he's giving her gifts, all this stuff. We know that's definitely to be true. And then it's rumored that he takes her, he hooks up with her right prior to her 16th name day.
mhm,
Lord Lionel Strong counseled the livid Viserys that Daemon should be executed for treason. Septon Eustace, however, reminds the council, that of the issue with kinslaying, and that
right,
Daemon should be exiled instead. Right, so he's already been gone, and now he's about to get exiled again. Right, and so
yeah,
he
yeah.
returns the Bloodstone and the Stepstones and resumes his struggle over his barren kingdom.
Yeah, I mean, so really to break this down a little bit, what he comes back, he reconciles, everything's good. He does not like Alicent Hightower, who was Viserys' second wife, because she's having sons, she's having children, which is pushing him further and further down the line. Now, before he left, it was just Rhaenyra Targaryen, and that was his only competition, really. I mean, it's sort of like Viserys hasn't had a son. His wife dies in childbirth, and that's where he gets gets in trouble for kind of mocking his brother's son, who only lived for a day and died. Um, so now Queen Alicent is having all of these children, and he's being pushed further and further down. So who is he now going to start to ally with? He's actually going to go sort of against the ruling of the Great Council of 101 AC, and instead of going with Alicent Hightower and all of her children and trying to make alliances there, he goes with Rhaenyra, who is Viserys' daughter and firstborn, and trying to make a connection there. You know, it's like, if I can't be king, then I'm going to attach myself to the next best thing, and I'm gonna, like, go in that direction. And so he starts to kind of court his niece, and teaches her a lot of different, things, helps her become, who she is, and she grows fond of him, and he's actually fond of her. You can argue that, there's people who
Right.
will, but yeah, so they start to develop some type of relationship, and he's working that angle, and then it upsets. It's interesting that you noted that it's Lord Lionel Strong who is upset by this, and then Viserys himself has to say, "Look, you can't be doing that," and like, because there's no actual, like, marriage alliance or anything like that. Has to be kind of formalized. You can't just go mess with the daughter heir or princess or whoever. So boom, he's exiled. You know.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, and I mean you know, you could almost argue that Damon's interference here. We know that the blacks and greens were kind of beginning here, but now it's also he is allying himself on the other side of the of kind of the faction here, right? With Rhaena Targaryen. And I think that just kind of amplifies what will come later, being the a full out war. So, okay, for just a little bit here, right? So, his wife, his wife, Rhea Royce, she dies. She falls off a horse.
Which
In
is
one
suspicious.
it
Let's
is
just
definitely it is it
mention
is
that.
definitely suspicious. In
Yeah.
115 AC, she falls off a horse. So he departs the Vale of Arryn to claim Runestone, which had been her seat, Rhea's seat. But he's refused by House Royce. Says he's not welcome in the Vale. Daemon has to go to Driftmark, where he lays eyes upon the enchanting Lena Valerian, right,
Mhm.
the beautiful daughter of his friend Lord Corlys. He After killing in a duel her betrothed, the son of the Sea Lord of Bravos, Daemon asks his friend, the sea snake, for his daughter's hand. While singers say Daemon fell in love with her at first sight, others state that he married into her only. He only married her so he could get into the House Valerian, right? Which is
Mhm.
also, we kind of forget about them actually.
Big
I
deal.
think,
Yeah.
especially in the main series, because they're Valyrian. They
Yeah.
have the same bloodlines that the Targaryens have, right? We kind of
Yeah.
forget about them, so they are definitely a pretty important, especially around this time. They had been married into the royal family a lot, so they have a lot of power and sway.
Yeah, and again, going back, so uh, again, the princess who was passed over, Rhaenys Targaryen, is married into Corlys Valerian's family. So you have Targaryens marrying in there, and they've become even stronger. They actually have legit claims to the throne. And so, yes, you can say that maybe Daemon decides to marry into that family because it's a powerful family, and there is maybe a path to the Iron Throne, perhaps. But I also think she's very beautiful, and he does,
Right.
to a degree, love her,
Right.
actually. So
There is one other thing to remember. I think, especially if you're, yeah, like a lot of our podcast listeners, readers of the main series, and now people are starting to go back since the show is over and catch up with some of the stuff from Fire and Blood and World of Ice and Fire. Remember this: that at this time there are dragons there's a lot of dragons, right?
That's
Everybody,
right.
people
That's
people
right.
have them, and the House Valerian has the ability to ride dragons because of that Valyrian blood. So that is also an enormous advantage that
Huge.
family has, right? That
Has.
bloodline,
Yeah.
and that's something we see. You see in the Dance of Dragons, we see that, right? Where they're just trying to go get whoever can try and ride it, and if you can, it's yours.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So
No, it's huge because like if you have access, like you can see what one dragon makes a huge difference. I mean, you can go in and just decimate armies and stuff. Like it's
right.
just it's huge. It's a
I mean,
big
Daenerys
thing.
takes
So
over in the show. Daenerys takes over King's Landing pretty much by herself,
yeah,
with
yeah,
one dragon. So,
yeah,
right, okay. So, yeah, as you said, he's marrying into House Valerian, but his marriage is outside of the consent of his brother, King Viserys,
right.
right? So then that that back and forth issue we've been talking about them. So Daemon takes his wife and leaves, kind of heads over to Essos towards the free cities. They remain in Pentos for some time until they learn that she is pregnant.
Yep.
And he has two daughters there, Bela and Rhaena, and they're born in Essos there in about 116 AC. Daemon writes his brother begging, that he can return so he can present his daughters at the court, receive a royal blessing. The small council advised the kings to refuse, but Viserys says he's a father now. Maybe he will have changed. So again, they're brothers. Their relationship, it is a total back and forth.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, yeah,
Oh yeah,
I agree with you. They are brothers, and there's a lot of back and forth. I think it's important to kind of remember this is kinslaying is a big deal. We're not doing that. I mean, exile is pretty harsh, but he had to. Um, a part of me thinks Damon knows that he's putting his brother in this position. He knows his own nature, and he knows that there's a lot of different vying people and opinions and powers on the council and stuff like that. So he's writing his brother. He's playing to that sort of family bond and tie. Like, look, I now have kids, and even though you didn't, he's like, he's legitimately married, but he's not. It wasn't something that was approved or a-okayed by the king. I mean, he's a member of the royal family, so like that has to kind of be approved. And since it wasn't, that's why they were exiled. And now that we have kids, like, come on, this is legit. So he's able to come back and sort of plays to King Viserys, just his emotions, that emotional connection, that love that he has for his brother. So
yeah. Yeah,
yep,
absolutely. So, okay. So remember now we have Viserys' daughter, right? His first daughter, Rhaenyra Targaryen. She is is wed, excuse me, into House Valerian, as said, right? While Rhaenyra dislikes her stepmother, Alicent Hightower, she becomes fond of Lena, and the two rode together on dragons with the blessing of King Viserys. Rhaenyra betrothed her two elder sons, Jacaerys and Lucerys Valerian, to Bela and Rhaena. Then Lena dies in 120 AC. How she was trying to give Daemon a son, trying to give him birth to a son for Daemon. So,
yep,
so now, we'll start to move into his third marriage here. But so now there's more pieces on the board, right?
yeah, yeah.
As we're going down this line here.
Yeah, so exactly. So there's a lot going on here with like marriage alliances, and this is where I think the show is going to kind of fill in a lot of these gaps and show us a lot of this stuff. So an interesting thing has happened. Daemon, the Rogue Prince, Daemon Targaryen, has married into House Valerian, Lena Valerian. Lena has a brother, Laenor, who also marries Rhaenyra Targaryen, and so now Viserys has like, I think you'd almost see that as a good thing, right? Because there was some division between Corlys Valerian and Viserys, and now his daughter and his brother have married into Corlys Valerian's family. So that should generate like a stronger kind of tie. But what Viserys doesn't see happening is that his eldest daughter and his brother are allied here, but all of his sons and daughters that are through Alicent Hightower are not. And so we're starting to create this big divide, which is the problem. And then as Sir Matt mentioned, Laena Valerian dies in 120 AC, just trying to give birth to a son. So Daemon only has daughters, but those daughters are already sort of betrothed to Rhaenyra's children that she has. So it's complex. It is a complex little situation we have kind of going on here. So
yeah, and then let's make it even more complex here, because
yeah.
in 120, so after Laena, right, has died, Daemon's wife has died. Daemon marries again, this time to Rhaenyra Targaryen, right, his niece, who he's been fond of, and it's performed entirely without Viserys Targaryen's knowledge, right, and so it's a big deal, right, because Rhaenyra's husband had, you know, had been dead for 6 months. According to Mushroom, it was Daemon who arranged for the death of Laenor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then his wife, has died as well. And so now we're back here to, okay, gonna have an issue with Viserys, right? And the big deal is that they have two sons together. Aegon, Prince Aegon, known as Aegon the Younger, who will become, the big deal at the end of all of this,
Mm-hmm.
and Prince Viserys, born in 122 AC. So now he's married his niece, right? He's married his
Yes.
brother's daughter, which he didn't want to happen, and so now it's really going to cause issue. And this is kind of the final kind of nail in the coffin before the whole Dance of the Dragons just explodes, and the blacks and the greens, and
Yeah.
Ares versus Damon.
Yeah, and this is going to be fascinating. This is actually going to be fascinating to see in the show and see what they do here, because Princess Rhaenyra is also equally as fascinating as Daemon. But Daemon is the one who, she's a lot younger and she's growing up into this role, and she is being heavily influenced by her uncle. And what's suspicious, even though I say that I think maybe he was attracted to Laena Valerian, his second wife, she dies in childbirth, and not too long after, again in 120 AC, the same year, Laenor, her brother, is killed, who was married to Rhaenyra, who Daemon was possibly took her virginity back in King's Landing and was exiled for. I mean,
Right.
so like you can kind of draw a pretty clear connection that maybe he had something to do with Laenor's death, saying whatever, you have kids, like they had kids, and Rhaenyra's kids are already betrothed to the kids that he had with Laena. So now he's sort of like, my niece is available, I'm available, here we go. And
Yeah.
he marries Rhaenyra. So
Yeah.
so
Absolutely.
now I mean, he's really you have this faction
It's
that is,
it's gonna be so interesting to see when the prequel does come out, 2021, I believe. HBO Max, yeah, is launching here the next couple of days, actually, or by the time this video posted, will have just launched. And it's going to be one of their big shows. So, I mean, this is going to be this is the Game of Thrones, whether you like season 8 or not. I mean, in terms of Emmy wins and all that stuff, I mean, you could argue the most successful show ever on television. And so this is going to be a big deal. So it's going to be really interesting to see this stuff happen on TV. And I actually think, in terms of this, comparing this to the main series, I think this is it's an easier task to take on. One, because we know the ending of it, and two, it's a little more straightforward, but it's vague enough that you're not tied to the books, because it's just, here's a description of events. And so now you can just get some writers in there and just craft these
that's right.
great stories. Really, you're just given an outline, and here you go.
Yeah, and one important thing, and you already kind of touched on this, Sir Matt, but this is important for when you think about the show. So the perspectives in the novella, The Rogue Prince, or King's Brother, if you will, that story, and then even in Fire and Blood, the maester who's writing that is pulling from the accounts of Mushroom, Septon Eustace, Lord Otto Hightower, a couple grand maesters, and Prince Daemon himself. So you kind of have to say, like, and a lot of times it's like one person said this and this person said this, and they're two completely opposite accounts of the same thing, right? We see the outcome, but what caused that outcome is up for debate. And I think that's where I think maybe even the show might leave some of that ambiguous. They might answer some questions, maybe not. But it's going to be fascinating. There's a lot you can do, and you can weave in a lot of other minor houses and sort of see how these alliances are made. There's just plenty of room in there to do a lot more stuff in Westeros and in King's Landing. So
Yeah,
it's gonna be
absolutely.
great. It's gonna be great.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. So, all right, guys, if you like this video, hit that subscribe button. Let us know what you guys think. Leave a comment down below. I mean, are you guys excited for the prequel show? And what do you think it's gonna look like? What you know, how are they gonna go about it? It'll be interesting too. Eventually, when we maybe get some sort of casting news, right? Who's
Mhm.
gonna play some of these? Who's gonna play
Yeah.
some of these characters and stuff like that? So, all right, guys, thank you guys for watching, and remember that winter is coming.